Welcome to my backyard and my fake campsite. Truth is, I just wanted to jump onto the tiny home bandwagon, so I got a tiny tent. So it's winter, but summer is coming, and with summer and spring come opportunities for camping. So when I was sent the OUPES Exodus 1200 to test out, one of my main things I wanted to do with it was be able to take it with me on a campsite. So when you go camping, of course, there's 3 systems that you need to think about. So the first is food. You gotta have a food system, something so you can eat. The second is sleep. You gotta have somewhere to sleep and maybe some comfort there. And then of course the bathroom. I'm not 100% sure how the OUPES 1200 is gonna help me with the bathroom, but we're gonna talk about it. So let's take a look. So I'm about to put the OUPES Exodus 1200 through its paces in what would be sort of a primitive or non-electric campsite. So one of the things that you might be looking for is a campsite for your tent camping or car camping that isn't as crowded. And a lot of times ones with electric get filled up, and maybe ones without electric aren't as crowded, don't have as many people. Or maybe you just want to go out into the woods where it's not a real campsite, you're just boondocking, whatever you want to do. Or you're in a primitive campsite where you maybe have to hike, and so you get your stuff in there. So what would you do if you didn't have power and you had the Exodus 1200 here? If you're going to take your Exodus 1200 camping for more than a day, you're going to want to think about solar power. Unfortunately today there's just a lot of cloud cover, but let's assume that there wasn't a lot of cloud cover and we were going to actually get a decent amount of solar onto our solar panel here. This is a HQST 100-watt solar panel that is within the spec range of what the Exodus 1200 can take just straight off the back of the panel. In an ideal situation, you would want to max out or get closer to the 240 watts maximum that the Exodus 1200 could take in. And so for us, that means we would have a second panel. So imagine, if you will, in addition to the panel that we have here, we also have a second panel. So side by side, the HQST panels at 100 watts, if you wire them in series, will be over the voltage input of the Exodus 1200. But if you wire them in parallel, you'll be under the amp cap of the 1200. These are 5.5 amp, and the 1200 can take 12 amps. So 5.5 times 2 is 11. So it's just under that 11 amp. If I had a second panel, I'd show you how that worked. But theoretically, you could get, on a sunny day in really great conditions, 180 to 190 watts of solar out of these 2 panels. If you had a 240 watt panel, I know OUPES makes a panel like that, you could get a little more than 200 watts on a really good day pumping into your Exodus 1200 for several hours a day. 200 watts going into a 992 watt hour battery means you need about 5 hours of solid sun to fill it up from zero. You're going to be using it during the day, and you're not going to be using it during the night. The goal is to take in enough power during the day so that you can use it overnight for what you need it for, which hopefully isn't very much, and then have it during the day until the solar catches back up. So the goal is to have continuous power coming from your solar into your Exodus 1200. What can you do to charge your Exodus 1200 if it suddenly gets very cloudy? I'm sitting inside my car here, and while it's cloudy and my solar panel isn't going to charge, I'm just going to go ahead and let my car run a little bit and charge off of my car's electrical system. It's a 12 volt system at 10 amps, so that would be 120 watts max. So let's see if we can get, a decent amount of wattage charging this OUPES Exodus 1200 up. So when I initially plugged it in, of course it didn't immediately jump up to 100 watts of input, but over the last couple of minutes it's just been steadily climbing. So now it's kind of maxed out here in the 105 to 110 kind of range, which, again, with a maximum of 120 watts possible, that's actually pretty good. I'm in a little economy car here, so it's not like it's a large SUV with a big electrical system or something. So yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased with the amount of input that I'm getting there. In a pinch, I could run this for a good bit and get a lot more power back into the battery if I needed to, assuming that you had cloudy days and rainy days out at the campsite. So one thing that you're going to really want to have is a sleep system. And so one way that the Exodus 1200 can help you is with one of these 12-volt pumps to pump up an air mattress. So let's get that going. Kicked on no problem. Looks like we're pulling about 45 watts. All right. Now let's just assume that this twin size air mattress fits in my tiny tent. That'll be nice and comfortable. Now that we've got our bed all made up, let's go ahead and get the cooler cooling down using the 12-volt Igloo cooler that we have. So the cooler should pull between 65 and 70 watts continuously because there is no compressor, it just runs all the time. If we had a solar system that was capable of putting out a couple of hundred watts of power into the 1200 and the cooler was only going to take 65 watts of power, we should be able to run this continuously. The 200 watts of solar power will keep the battery charged up, and then overnight the cooler should run more than through the night. So in the morning when the sun comes back up again, then theoretically you would get power and it would catch itself back up. So in a pinch, in a crisis, or just out for several days doing some camping, you could keep your cooler running very cool. Now there are way more energy efficient coolers, ones with compressors and that kind of stuff, but this is an older model that just kind of has a fan that blows, but it keeps everything about 30 or 40 degrees cooler than the outside temperature. And so it would serve you very well in a campsite. Another thing that you might want to do when you're camping is maybe get some shots, get some camera shots. You might want to fly a little drone like this little DJI Neo, depending on what the rules are in the area. And if you do that, you're going to want to keep it charged. They last about 18 minutes on a battery. And luckily, there's a port where you can discharge it. And there's a port on the 1200 that will plug right into it. Looks like it's barely pulling any power at all, but we'll leave this here to charge. I think you'll find with most of your portable electronics that they just don't take that much power to charge. They just need some power. So your phones, even to some degree your laptops, it takes a little bit more, iPads, that kind of thing. You're gonna be pulling 20, 30, maybe 40 watts of power at a time. Now so far we've only tested the DC side of things, but I wanted to test the AC side and maybe plug in a few things you might bring along with you on your camping trip. One thing, you may just have so many DC devices that you need to, charge them more. And so you might just be plugging in some little wall wart type deals here and trying to charge up maybe an iPad. Kind of see there. So it's charging now. And we'll let that charge. In addition, it's probably not going to be the middle of winter and you won't be wearing a heavy coat to stay warm while you're outside. So you may have something like this, a full-size fan that you want to deploy to keep yourself a little cool. So let's get that plugged in, see how it goes. And then we'll turn it on. That's the maximum power. Currently, with everything plugged in, I'm pulling about 180 watts. So, at maximum power, running the cooler, charging things, about 180 watts. Drop it down to minimum, just to setting 1. And we're at about 150 watts. Not that much difference between the different fan speeds. Now you might be thinking, I didn't come out to the woods to give up my creature comforts. I didn't come out here to rough it. I need something that draws a little more power than what you've been showing me. I need a microwave, or I need my electric kettle. Well, you're in luck. The Exodus 1200 has a 1200 watt inverter plus another 300 watts of kind of boost mode. And so let's see how this little 700 watt cooking power microwave does on it. Now I should tell you 700 watts doesn't mean that it only draws 700 watts. So let's get it turned on. And then I'll take my cup. Maybe I want to heat up some tea, water for some tea, put it in. All right, let's see what kind of power she's drawing. Looks like we're running right around 1300 watts of power. That is with the microwave running, the cooler running, and still charging my drone. So we're up into boost mode pretty good. And when the microwave kicks off, it drops right back down. Now this is a Hamilton Beach 1500 watt electric kettle. Now they make smaller ones, and I would definitely suggest if you're gonna go camping, maybe you don't bring out the 1500 watt appliances. For the 1200 watt OUPES Exodus 1200 with a boost mode of 1500 watts, we'll see if this will even touch it. Now I've turned off everything else. I turned off all the other DC just to give it a chance, because probably this is gonna spike and it's gonna throw me into an error. But let's give it a try. We've got AC on and everything else off. Let's give it a try. I'm immediately up to 1375 watts, 1370. So it's not hitting 1500. That's good. We'll see how long it runs and if we can boil some water. That's a little under 2 cups of water in there. More than enough for a cup of coffee or a cup of hot tea. Settling out to about 1360 watts. We've been running for a couple of minutes now, starting to boil pretty good, and we're still pulling about 1360 watts. It hasn't dropped below that. So this boost mode, I mean, I know it's only rated for 1200 watts and it won't do it forever, but it's working pretty good. So one of the things we haven't really talked about is the bathroom system. There's really not a lot that a solar generator can help you out with, unless maybe it's just giving you some light. So one pretty simple option is just a little USB LED light. You can pick them up off of Amazon. They just plug right into the front. Of course, you can buy things like this, which is both a fan and a light that you can hang, but they're rechargeable. And so turn on your light. It's hard to see during the daylight. You can also have a fan going. But you may want something a little more festive around the campsite, and of course we can do lights like Christmas lights. All right, so the lights are strung, and if it were dark, this would be much more impressive. And now the lights are on, but they're fairly dim, they're not LED, but they would be nice to have around the camp at night. Hopefully my fake camping trip will give you a better idea of what maybe the OUPES Exodus 1200 will do on your real camping trip. Obviously I didn't do everything that you might need power for, but hopefully this gives you kind of a good idea of what you might expect out of this little solar generator. And also, hopefully at your camping trip, you'll have a tent that you can actually stand up in.